Hello, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
It's great to welcome you to Paranormal Dimensions. This is show number 169, I think it is. Pretty sure it is, anyway. And now I know you've been around for quite a while. I've seen you talk probably a couple of times now.
Yes.
I've not seen you for a few years because I think you sort of took a quiet period.
No, I mean, investigations have been continuing apace, but maybe the conferences that you saw me at have stopped running. So,
Yeah,
not
there's
without
probably
you.
that. Yeah,
Still speaking at other ones.
yeah. I've not seen you at anything like Awakening or anything. I don't think.
I
In
haven't been to.
Manchester.
I've been to Awakening a number of years ago, but not in recent years. It's just opportunity really, and other
Yeah.
things going on
Are
around the
you,
same
well,
time.
yeah, just in passing. Are you going this year in
I
Manchester?
may be, but I'm going to a music festival within days of it, so it's going to
Oh,
be a
I
bit of
see.
a.
Well, I know the
There's a
feeling.
lot going on in August, so I'll have to wait and see.
Oh, well, I have to watch out for you if you do turn up. But
Indeed.
anyway, I mean, as I say, you've been investigating UFOs and all sorts of things over the years.
Yes.
Um, I mean, how did you actually get? What was your first case? Was it in? I believe it was 2008, wasn't it?
Early 2008, yeah. Essentially, the group Birmingham UFO Group first came into existence in late 2007, and I wasn't always the chairman for the group. It was initially started by another couple of gents from Quinton in Birmingham, but I was one of the first people to come across the group online. They just put out an advert, and me and my brother found the advert and thought, this is really great. There's a UFO group that's within reach. It'd be really convenient. Just go out there and just meet with like-minded people. So I started going to their group meetings, which actually started in the corner of a pub initially. It wasn't even in a function room
Yeah, they
initially.
usually do, don't they? That sort
That's
of
it,
thing.
yeah. So it's just a nice little gathering, just having a chat. But it was about 2 or 3 months after the group had got started that the chairman of the group realised my kind of passion and drive for the subject. Now, on one of those early meetings, there were 4 lads had come down in the sort of mid to late 20s, and they'd come down the group, and they were talking about a recent UFO sighting that they'd had literally within weeks of talking about it. And I thought it'd be really good to go actually to the location where it took place, because I was chatting with them about it and it sounded great. And it was in the Birmingham area. So I thought, oh, that'd be really interesting to go to the actual location where it happened with the actual witnesses. Now, it wasn't intended as being an investigation, but when the chairman of the group found out that I was doing this, I was going to go to the location, they essentially asked me, would you like to write it up as a proper sort of report for the group? And I said, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. So on the night itself, it was a couple of weeks later, just went out to the location. And where this took place was a clearing in a wood in King's Winford, which is North Birmingham, kind of overlooks the area. You can see the lights of Dudley in the distance. And I'd gone there, and what I didn't tell the witnesses is that I was going to be investigating the case. And I didn't warn them in advance that I was going to take them to one side at a certain point of the night and interview them in depth about what had happened. And because it's better to go in just blindly like that, of course. Now, there were 4 of them involved, 4 witnesses. And yeah, we went to the clearing where the incident happened, which I'll go over in a minute. And then at a certain point of the night, I took them all to one side and essentially got the details of what had happened, and also got them to draw the what had been seen. But yeah, so yeah, when this happened, it was actually the 10th of March, I think. 10th of February, sorry, 10th of February in 2008. And a lot of evenings, what they would do is they would go to this particular clearing in this woods just to hang out. They'd build a bonfire, sit around it. They'd occasionally have a couple of drinks, but I will put out there, I don't think that alcohol was anything to do with what happened at all. So they'd gone out and they were just relaxing around this fire. And it got to about 11 o'clock at night. Now, obviously, due to the fact it was February, it was fully dark, quite a chilly night, but also very, very clear with a view of the stars. And Kings Winford, the area is known as Ridgewood, and it's to the west. You can see over Enville and Kinver areas, and because it's up on a slope, you get a nice view of the surroundings. And then on the other way to the east is the lights of Dudley in the distance. So they're out there in this wood by themselves around this bonfire, and one of them, also coincidentally named Dave, gets up and walks to the edge of the wood just to kind of have a look around. He's just relaxing, and in the distance, across over towards Enville, he sees it's a glowing orb of mixed coloured lights. He thinks it was like white and red and a bit of blue in there. Now, obviously, if you're seeing coloured lights in the distance, even though blue isn't a standard navigation light that you get on aircraft, you're obviously going to think, oh, it's a distant aircraft or distant helicopter. And it was just moving along, just moving slowly to the left like that. So it would have been coming down south. But he realized that it was also, it seemed to be quite low down, sort of lower than a helicopter might fly at. And he also realized it was actually getting closer. It was actually moving towards them as it was coming in. It kind of altered course. So it was going to the left, but then he realized it was sort of coming more their direction. And as he got nearer, he thought, it doesn't look right at all. It doesn't look like a normal aircraft in any way. So he calls over his friends, the other 3 witnesses. They're all watching this thing approach. And when they got a good look at it, what they described was an octagonal shaped black disc, essentially. So it's like a flattened octagon. It had numerous lights in the base of it. There was a central white light, and then around the edge, 4 other lights. So there's quite a few cases of flying triangles where triangular-shaped craft with lights at the corners are seen. I've investigated many cases of those over the years, but this was octagonal. But again, it had the lights positioned kind of around the outer edges and this central light. And it came in, and they realised it was completely silent. As it got nearer, it started to ascend to keep in the altitude with the edge of the hill. And it came in, and they moved back to the clearing as it approached. And it literally went over their heads. It went over the top of the clearing. And as it was going over, it actually slowed down a bit, for a few seconds, almost like it was checking them out. And then it sped up again and kind of carried on eastward across the wood. Now, of course, they want to keep an eye on this thing because what on earth it is. Obviously, it's something very strange. They think it was about sort of 30 or 40 foot across, so quite a sizable thing, and they could see it above the trees. And it certainly appeared low enough that if it had been making sound, they would have heard it. They seemed to be completely silent. Now, in talking with them about this, lots of little anecdotal details came out. Like one of the witnesses, he actually tripped over off a tree branch because it's quite dark out there in the forest. So he's running through the woods and he accidentally tripped over a tree branch and hurt his ankle and that sort of thing. So there was these little anecdotal details that kind of rang true with me as it being a real case. They got to the edge of the wood and they watched this thing move off in the distance of Dudley. And at this point, it's really interesting. They said that they watched it for up to half an hour. So or what felt like half an hour to them for an extended period of time, essentially. So, and in the distance, it just looked like a helicopter or something like that, like a patrol helicopter. Now, it's entirely possible that maybe at some point they got muddled up with a helicopter and were watching a helicopter at a distance, maybe. But to their knowledge, they didn't lose track of it. They just watched it move away, and then they could see this light sort of moving backwards and forwards over the housing. And they watched it for quite a period of time. After a while, they actually left the area with the object still visible in the distance, which is incredible. And 2 of the witnesses actually saw it again on the way home from a different angle. They just looked at the same direction, and it was still over there, to their knowledge. So that's kind of that's the first case that I officially investigated for the group, because what I did is I wrote out the details of what had happened, got them to do drawings and everything, which all correlated very, very well. There were slight differences between them, but you get that with multiple witness cases. Always there'll be like minor differences, not just with UFOs, with anything. So say 10 people watch a car crash and the police investigate them, there's going to be minor differences between their different recollections of events. Somewhat similar, but I was very impressed with the case. It certainly came across very believable. The witnesses did not appear to be making it up like they'd fabricated a story in advance. I wrote out a detailed case report, and that essentially became the first case report that I put out for Birmingham UFO Group. So from that point onwards, in early 2008, I've been the official investigator for the group. In summer 2009, I got taken on as the chairman of the group as well. For the original chairman, it was a kind of short-term thing. It requires quite a lot of dedicated time and effort to do this on a regular basis and keep the group running alongside all the investigative work. And they knew I'd be the right person for the job. So they handed over the chairman responsibilities. They still came down the meetings from time to time. Occasionally, they'll turn up at our monthly meetings. And since then, I've also taken on 2 other investigators who assist with certain cases. Although I'd say about over 90% of the cases are still investigated and documented by myself.
Right, is there still a lot going on there that you see? Or
I mean, cases are still happening. There was one literally from the start of March in Belbroughton of a flying triangle, large black triangular craft went straight over somebody's house and continued southward. Now, if let's say it didn't change course, it would have literally flown right across Belbroughton's town centre. So it's possible there's other witnesses out there who have either yet to come forward or maybe confided in somebody else. The problem is with the UFO subject is there's so many different groups and investigating their own cases. It's very hard to tell because there's no definite database where it's all stored, whether something's on record or not. And of course, a lot of people tend to keep experiences to themselves. So
that's right, yeah, because of ridicule and all that.
Because of the ridicule and that, yeah. So they might confide in their family and friends, but they won't reach out to a researcher like myself to get it officially documented. But the individual that it was actually two witnesses with this one. It was an elderly chap and his carer. And the key witness, he actually had a background in aviation, really liked going to air shows and that sort of thing. So he was very impressed by the sighting of this thing that went right over his house. He knew it wasn't a normal aircraft, and also it definitely wasn't. It was a solid singular object. So some flying triangle sightings can be, of course, three lights that just happen to be in a triangular formation. And people will kind of fill in the gaps essentially, and imagine some sort of triangular shaped craft. But
a bit like the Phoenix lights, I think, were a bit like that, weren't they?
Yeah. Although it's an interesting one because there were some of the witnesses actually said it was separate objects and up close, and then other ones actually said that it was a solid boomerang shaped thing. So, and I actually investigated a case of a new witness with a military background, believe it or not. Went on the record from seeing the Phoenix lights. It's the first time I'd spoken with somebody because obviously there's hundreds of people were involved in that case, of hundreds of witnesses of this thing or whatever it was. And I was hoping that one day I'd be able to speak with at least one witness of the Phoenix lights incident. And it was a couple of years ago. I was investigating a case with so the gentleman had a military background, but he actually had lots of UFO and contact experiences since childhood, coincidentally, alongside this sighting of the Phoenix lights. But yeah, he came forward, and it was really interesting speaking to him. Where he had actually seen it was between Phoenix and Tuscan. So after it had gone over the area of Phoenix, it continued kind of southeast direction, roughly close to the main road, and he'd been out shopping for the day in Phoenix, and they were driving back home to Tuscan, and he actually saw the craft from a kind of, I say craft, obviously people have different opinions, but whatever it was, UFO, saw the thing from a side perspective, and he said it was it was definitely a solid thing. He said he could see it blocking out the stars. And he didn't see the proper sort of V shape of it because he was viewing it from a side perspective. So he could see that there's kind of largest object with a number of white lights towards the right hand side, which would have been on the leading edge of the thing.
Because the lights were actually moving in unison, which would lead to a lot of solid objects, weren't they?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it's very, very interesting. I mean, with his military background, obviously he'd be very familiar with seeing both military and civilian aircraft and knowing how to identify them at different distances and everything. He was actually working on one of the military bases in the vicinity of Phoenix at the time, but he'd taken a week off and had gone out shopping on the day of the incident. So he actually wasn't on the base. But when he got back to the base a few days later, he actually checked with his officers, etc. And that's where he found out that it wasn't theirs. Because when he first saw it, he thought this has got to be some kind of classified military thing. We've got to know what this is. And he actually didn't tell his wife that what he was looking at, because she was in the car. He'd gone out and saw this thing, and he didn't tell her because he thought, when he saw it, he thought, this has got to be classified. I shouldn't be looking at this. And when he got back to the base a few days later, after the end of his break period, that's where he found out that it wasn't launched by them or anything, and he realised that it was anomalous. And he certainly seemed to put it down to an off-world craft of some kind. Yeah.
I think the amazing thing with me, as we know in the States, they've got lots of Air Force bases around in the desert areas. Like in the scheme of things, you got like White Sands, Area 51, if you like, and all these sort of places. So, I mean, what's your opinion of some of these triangular? Do you think some of them could actually be our craft? I say ours in a general term, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that at least some of them are going to be human flown things, either kind of some black projects or people misidentifying military craft like stealth aircraft for something other. But alongside that, I think that some of them definitely aren't. So I've dealt with numerous contact cases where people have described flying triangles just like that, and are actually been taken up into them and had abduction type experiences with non-human entities aboard. So and there's other cases on record, none that I've directly investigated, but cases I'm aware of where people have seen these things landed on the ground and seen non-human entities around them on the ground. So it certainly appears that at least some of them are non-human. Now, I'm quite cautious with how I describe things. So my personal viewpoint of what's going on with this, I certainly believe that there's multiple types or species.
Yeah, there seems to be
of these beings. They appear to be working together towards common agendas. So there's some sort of agreement going on between them. Their exact origin, my personal opinion, is the most likely explanation is that they are extraterrestrial, but also possess extremely advanced characteristics like extra-dimensional type abilities. There's numerous reasons for why I believe that, from some of the things that I've been told by experiences over the years, to the kind of vast technology on display and some of the characteristics of the things. But obviously there's a lot of different opinions on the exact origins. Some people believe that they're actually from our future and are sent back by future humans, or even our future humans. But I think the important thing to realize is that it's going on, and that it's not human in origin, and less so the exact origin. There's so many unanswered questions with this. And even if, let's say, for example, there's a contact experience and somebody has an abduction and they see greys aboard, for example, and the greys telepathically speak with them and they tell them, we're from this particular star system. Maybe they'll show them a map of it, or they'll get a vision in their head of their home planet or whatever. Yeah. How do we know that the beings are telling the truth?
Well, yeah, there's always that, yeah.
And because they can do very advanced things like implant memories in people's heads, show them visions that appear to be real and everything, even change their own appearance or the appearance of their craft using screen memories. There's definitely a covert level going on with this. You know, I don't believe that they want the human race to openly know about what's happening, about what they're doing. Now there are, of course, lots of cases where things have been seen, but I think that a lot of the time that's accidental. There's a lot of cases on record where they appear to have been seen in very rural areas or in the dead of night, and often the person is kind of on their own, or the witnesses are on their own and nobody else happens to be around. Now, sometimes there's oddities with that, like time distortion and this sort of thing. There's so many advanced aspects to this subject, and there's a lot of unanswered questions. But yeah, my viewpoint, I come at it from a positive light, as in it's real and genuinely going on, but I'm also quite grounded with it, and I think you have to be, because the majority of things that are seen have got mundane explanations. And I've spoken with so many people over the years where they've just gone down the rabbit hole with this subject, you know, and they just think that like literally everything is like a spacecraft. There's so many things out there that are flying around. And even in more modern years, for example, we've obviously got drones. So a number of years ago, sort of pre-2015, yeah, drones weren't commercially available. They were still being used by the military, but they weren't commercially available, yeah. But in the past, somebody could have reported seeing a kind of glowing red light or lights shot sideways, suddenly stopped dead, made a really fast vertical ascent, and then zipped away like a bullet. Yeah, sounds amazing, doesn't it? It sounds incredible. It's like classic UFO type details there. Now, in the past, that would have seemed very, very impressive. But today, if somebody tells me that, then it's entirely possible that what they've seen is a distant drone.
Yeah.
And after dark, obviously, you lose all kind of bearing as to how far away from you objects are, because there's no point of reference. So sometimes a kind of smaller object closer can appear like a much bigger object at a great distance.
Absolutely right.
Dealt with lots of cases like that. So.
I mean, unfortunately, that's what we face now, isn't it? As a, you know, if you're doing research, you've got to look at the drone aspect of it now. You know, could it have been a drone? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Apart from like, all the different aircraft that you see. I'll tell you, Dave. I saw back in 1967. I mean, I've said this on this show several times. I saw a big oval orange object,
yes,
and across the night sky, which was pulsating. There's all different shades of orange. it seems like we don't see so many of these objects. I know they are still seen. I think all these orange objects and things, but it seems to be that the triangular object seems to have taken over as being the number one object now that gets seen. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that partially the reason for that is the ban on sky lanterns. So a lot of the orange orb sightings from the past that I've investigated on previous years, if you go back through my case files and they go back to the early years, like 1 in every 3 cases at least was orange orbs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
obviously, I could guarantee this one wasn't, because it was actually...
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I've dealt with some cases involving orange glowing orbs of light that have performed very intelligent maneuvers. Have followed people for a number of miles, changing direction when they change direction, that sort of thing. So straight away with those sort of cases, you can rule out lanterns. Yeah. But there's a lot of cases. And there's even been some more recently. You don't get them as much anymore because of the fire risk, they've stopped selling.
That's right. Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, so there's a lot less cases of orange orbs these days because of that. But you still get them occasionally, and of course, people still have them stored away. Like the last New Year, I saw there was at least a couple still in the sky. Nothing like the great numbers that we used to get.
There's always going to be somebody breaking the rules. That's right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So they may have kept them away in the garage, and they're like, "Oh, let's finally light it." So people will still see it. But these days, obviously, you've got things like Starlink now as well, which again is muddying the waters quite a lot. So when these Starlink launches happen, of which there's been multiple, of course, I almost always will get at least one sighting report of them. And some of them have been quite dramatic, where people be like, "Oh my God, there's an armada of spacecraft. They're all coming across the sky one after the other. It's definitely intelligent, And it's so it shows there that if you don't know what you're looking at, if you don't know what Starlink is, and you don't know that they all launch together and do follow along a straight course until they kind of spread out with their own rockets, you can see how that would look impressive to some people. Another recent example, while we're on the subject of kind of mundane objects. Up near Stoke-on-Trent, there's an events centre, and they sometimes shine these massive searchlights into the air. And when they hit the cloud layer, they're in a circular shape. Now, if you don't know what you're looking at, it can look extremely impressive, and you might view it as a large disc-shaped craft hidden in the clouds, and you're just seeing the lights coming through the clouds. Whereas in actual fact, it's just an event centre and searchlights. So again, with each case, you have to kind of just look at the aspects I'm reckoning, not just what's seen, how it's moved, the lighting conditions, everything, background of the individual, how easily swayed they are, whether they've looked into the UFO subjects. Because let's say there's an individual and they haven't got an interest in UFOs. Yeah, they might have seen a couple of episodes of X-Files or something like that, but they're not really into the subject properly. That can come across as far more believable than somebody who's just been looking into the subject for years, knows exactly what to look for. Maybe they're purposely looking out every night, desperate to see something with their own eyes. So they're going to be more easily swayed if they see something mundane. They're going to be like, "Oh my God, I finally had a UFO sighting." And they can get quite protective of that as well. So I've spoken with people where I've told them categorically that they've seen a drone or they've seen a Chinese lantern or whatever, and they just won't have it. They're like, no. It was definitely a spacecraft. And I'm like, well, why?
Well, yeah, I mean, you couldn't even say it's definitely a spacecraft, could you?
Yeah,
like you say, it could be an interdimensional craft for all you know. But
absolutely. No, well,
not you.
Okay,
I mean,
a craft. Yeah, absolutely. So an advanced craft, exactly. So it's so it's very, very difficult. People get set in their ways, and if they see something, they want it to be something unusual. A lot of the time, if somebody sees something that has impressed them and they think is a bit unusual, they might kind of embellish kind of how amazing it was.
Yeah.
But that said, I've dealt with quite a few cases where people have seen things proper up close, proper structured objects, domed discs, flying triangles, spheres, Tic Tacs, if you want to. I mean, obviously, up until a few years ago, they were called cigars. We referred to them as cigar craft, and essentially Tic Tac is a cigar with a rounded end. So,
yeah, that's right. I mean, Tic Tacs were quite big in the 60s, weren't they? Not, the cigar-shaped things.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, if you look at a saucer from sideways, it looks like a cigar as well.
Exactly.
So you got that as well.
Yeah, and this, I mean, talking about that, the same is with orbs. So after dark, obviously, if there's a craft at a distance, and it's glowing, it's just going to bleed into and just look like a glowing orb. So they're going to describe a glowing orb unless it gets within range and they can actually see its actual true shape. So
Yeah.
I think that is why glowing orbs are one of the more commonly described types, probably one of the most common. I've never done an exact count, but I believe that out of the cases I've investigated, the most common type again is going to be glowing orbs. And then obviously you've got spheres as well. So in the daytime they're not going to be glowing, although they can obviously reflect the sunlight. But then a lot of the sphere sightings could easily be drifting mylar balloons. But it's all down to the movement. It's as much down to the movement as it is the appearance of the object. In some ways, more interesting and more compelling in a way. So if somebody sees a sphere and it's hovering for a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden shoots off at thousands of miles an hour, just straight up or off into the distance.
Yeah,
it's not a balloon. Full stop.
Well, I'll tell you, say very interesting that my wife and I, when we were living in Suffolk, it was a Sunday. I know it was a Sunday, and it was it was a really hot. We were sitting on our sun deck outside, and all of a sudden my wife saw objects up in the sky. She said, "What are those?" And there's like 3 objects in a triangular shape, and this is daytime. And then behind it, I don't know how far, but it was quite a big gap. There was another 3, they were all going along together. So what they were, I don't know. They were, and this is daytime, but they were like white objects.
Yeah.
So I mean, you got any ideas on that?
No. I mean, obviously you do get some novelty balloons and that sort of thing, but it all depends on the.
They seem to be way up at way.
Control.
They seem to be very, very high.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, obviously, you could have there's flights of aircraft as well at a very high altitude. You're gonna lose their definition and just look like kind of white sort of triangular or white dots.
Yeah, but what you think you'd hear those, wouldn't you? Because I mean, where we lived, it was very quiet, and there was no sound of any jets or anything. You'd think like 6 jets would make a hell of a racket going across the sky.
Well, absolutely, yeah. And the white colour is interesting as well. I've dealt with a few cases of other white coloured objects. There was a white flying triangle case from a while back. I remember it had a red light at one corner, blue at one corner, and green at the other corner. Really interesting. And that one was on the coast, and the witness actually watched it sort of fly out to sea from inland. Interesting. Yeah, there's some odd things going on out there.
Yeah, so there's some other things as well. One evening we had some young puppies. I mean, they're grown up now, but when we had our puppies, we had to take them outside in the evening to sort of have a wee before bed and everything. Again, my wife saw these 2 pods flying across the sky. They looked like grey pods flying across the sky. They weren't light at all.
Yeah,
and I couldn't see them at first, but I don't know how she spotted them, but they looked like they were flying in unison, sort of going. Well, I don't know which direction they were going. I think they were going northwards.
Yeah,
but they were like grey because you could just barely make them out. There were no lights on them at all. So that was another strange one. But I don't know if you've heard of things like that, things without lights on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of the time after dark, obviously the only way people genuinely see them is when they're glowing. Yeah. So or they can sometimes see things blocking out the stars, like we mentioned the Phoenix Lights incident, and that was a bit like that. But yeah. And then sometimes if there's a cloud layer, you can kind of make out objects against that after dark. But obviously most non-lit sightings are going to be kind of daylight sightings. And a lot of the time, the objects don't seem to kind of have glowing lights on them during the daytime.
No.
But when they are, you can sometimes be people can be convinced there's lights where it's actually a reflection of sunlight. Yeah, there's a very good example of that from a while back. It was actually so what they described was a long cylindrical shaped craft with flashing rainbow coloured lights along it. And I thought, wow, that's very interesting. It sounds wild. And when you speak with them, they said, yeah, I've got it on video as well. I was like, oh, fantastic. And can you send me the video footage? Yeah, sure. So they emailed me through the video footage. And essentially what it was a solar airship, which a lot of people still don't know what those are. They're quite rare. You can buy them online for only about sort of £10. They are massive, long, usually black coloured balloons that fill up with the hot air on a summer's day and drift up into the sky. Now, usually they're going to be tethered like a kite, but sometimes they can break from that tether and break off. And if there's a wind, they'll spiral. So I've dealt with some cases where people have seen them rotating and moving across the sky. But if it's still, quite often they'll turn vertical and they'll just sit vertical in the sky. Yeah. So if you don't know what you're looking at, you're like, what on earth is that? Yeah. And they
Yeah,
look
probably
quite
sitting on
impressive
an air
from the
current or
side.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and what it was the sunlight was glinting off it, making these rainbow coloured flashes of light that they were interpreting as lights on the craft. And I went back to them and told them that's what it was. They looked it up online and they said, yeah, I agree. And they were fine with that explanation. So
yeah, there's been even a few like professionals been taken in by flying balloons, haven't there?
yeah,
When you think,
absolutely. Indeed, yeah. I mean, it's very there's a lot going on out there, you know. And if you see something that you're not used to seeing on a daily basis, or even it is something normal like an aircraft, but you're viewing it in particular lighting conditions from a particular direction or whatever, it can look very impressive. So you have to remain kind of quite grounded with the subject, and I consider myself quite grounded, while at the same time certainly believing that it's genuine and going on a global level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And
definitely.
I've dealt with some very, very impressive cases over the years.
Yeah. Well, you like you say, you mentioned about the triangular craft. I mean, they've been seen all over the world as well. It's not as if it's just an American
Exactly, yeah.
thing or a UK thing. It's actually everywhere.
That's
I mean,
it, yeah.
you've got one written down here, July 1989, off the coast of Greece. Actually, a flying triangle.
Yes, yeah. That was an incredible case. That came my way just a couple of years ago. It involved an ex-aircraft mechanic who he's essentially retired from his position in the Greek Air Force. It took a lot of time to gain his trust. He was very, very cautious because the incident that he wanted to discuss with me was classified and is to this day classified. Now, once I'd spoken with him for a long while, I essentially convinced him that I wasn't going to just pass out his name and that sort of thing to the news or anything like that. And he then opened up. Now, obviously, I had to get background check on him, and to get his background check, he actually sent me photographs of his actual uniform with his name on. And he also sent photographs of himself actually on the airbase when the incident happened. Now, he wouldn't let me put the uniform pictures in the case report. He said those were for me only.
Yeah.
As I say, it was very
There's a lot of trust involved in that as well.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But the cases on the airbase are actually in the report with his face blacked out. He allowed me to put those in there. So with his background confirmed, we started to discuss what had happened. Now, this incident happened back in 1986. And it involved him and his entire squadron as 12 people. So a squadron was made up of 4 aircraft mechanics, 4 pilots, and 4 weapons experts. And their particular squadron was essentially, they were training exercises. Yeah, so on the base, they would essentially do these test operations and imagine that a foreign power had invaded. And then they'd have to act like it was a live thing. So it was like an exercise. And while he was stationed in these exercises, they would essentially sit at one end of the base and the western end of the runway, just in a building, and they'd have night duty. So they'd be there together, just chatting away through the night. And of course, most times nothing would happen, yeah. And then occasionally, while they're on shift, they'd do one of these false alarms, and they'd all have to act like they were being attacked and get airborne as fast as possible, etc. Well, on this particular night, oh, by the way, the base, he wouldn't allow me to say the name of the base, as I say, very shifty, but it's a large base on the east coast of Greece. And if you go looking on a map, you'll
that's what I say. I was rushing to their maps now.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm not. I
Yeah,
request.
sure.
Yeah, whatever is requested not to go out will not go out. Obviously, for myself. So essentially, they were in this building, and it was about midnight. And they were doing a shift change. So him and one of the other mechanics were changing over. So the other mechanic had been outside with the planes. He'd been sitting inside, and they did a shift change. He steps outside, and the other one goes in for a rest. Lovely clear night. He said the stars were out and everything. And looking to the east, right along the main base, obviously right down the central strip, about 500 yards away, he sees several lights in a triangular formation. Now this time there were red lights, so red lights in the triangular shape. I thought, that's weird. It seemed to be about over the middle of the runway, just pretty much central on the base, about 500 yards from their position to the east. And it was hovering sort of several hundred feet up, so not massively high up either. No, you said no higher than, I think it was no higher than 1,000 feet. So we're not talking about something right up high like an aircraft. It was more like a helicopter sort of height. So he calls out the rest of his squadron to see this and points it out. and they're listening and they can't hear any sound or anything. And these lights are just hovering there, motionless. Now, they couldn't see the main body of the object due to the distance, but he said that there was a slight movement going on with the three lights, and to all intents and purposes, he said it was a singular object, even though they couldn't see it because it was dark. Yeah. So it hovers there for a couple of minutes without moving, and then without warning, shoots off like a bullet and just goes bang like that off to the east, and they lose it in the space of a second. So it wasn't like it vanished and they didn't see it leave. They all saw it go. They saw it fly off at thousands of miles an hour to the horizon instantly. That sort of movement capability essentially completely removes any mundane explanation, pretty much. It was certainly something very anomalous. Now, at this point, when they see this, they're all, whoa, what on earth was that? And they think that the alarms are going to go off on the base because they think, well, they're going to have this thing on radar and they're going to launch the jets to intercept it or whatever. Nothing. There's no alarm goes off or anything. So they go back inside the building and they're all talking about what they've just seen. And they're thinking it must have been seen by the people on the base. Why haven't they detected it and that sort of thing? And there was nothing at all. So it comes to the end of their shift about 6 a.m. and they go back to their barracks for a sleep. Yeah. And there's another squadron kind of takes their place. When they wake up the following afternoon, they all get called to their superior's office. And when they go down there, he essentially starts by saying to them, "We're aware that you saw something last night." And what he claimed it was a test of a new type of airwax aircraft. That's the ones with the large round radar dishes on the top. Yeah. So in other words, absolutely nothing like what they saw here, because the AWACS aircraft have to continuously move because they're an airplane, not a helicopter. They don't look like 3 red lights in a triangular formation, and they definitely do not hover stationary and then shoot off into the distance. Now, they were all aware that this wasn't what they'd seen, but they
have to go along with it, because
so they didn't question them. And he then tells them it's classified. He said, "Do not tell even your families about this incident." And he'd never told anybody until he spoke with me a couple of years ago.
Interesting.
As I say, he was very, very shifty about getting it on record. I'll put it out there. No, I haven't had any negative repercussions from doing so. I think it's the only case I've investigated over the years that's officially classified to this day. All the other cases, even the other military ones I've investigated, there's no classification on them, but this one's definitely classified. Now, there is a slight oddity that happened with this case, which is really weird. And I try not to jump to conclusions with it. It's interesting. So I store all the cases I've investigated over the last 15 years on my home computer. Obviously, I've got backups and that sort of thing in case of the house fire or whatever. But anyway, so I've got them all laid out, of course, and I've dealt with so many cases over the years. I have to kind of be very organized with it. Otherwise, I just forget what was where. So I had the folder with all the photographs, including the ones he'd sent me of his uniform and all that in there. And one day, it was a few months after I'd released the case report on the Buford website. One of my friends were interested in the case and wanted to see the photos from the base and that sort of thing. Yeah, so I was like, okay, let me just get them up for you. Yeah, and I go to the folder, and that particular folder is not there on the computer. Wow, just that
really?
One. So, and I'm thinking, okay, could I drag that accidentally into another folder? Yes, but so
that can be done. I've done that. Yeah,
I do a search. It's not on the computer anyway. Yeah. Now, on my machine, if I put something to the recycle bin, it'll bring up a warning message. I don't recall ever getting a warning message. Now, if I'd have gone to the Buford website and that case had been gone off the Buford website as well, I would have been straight away. I would have been 100%. I've been hacked, and they've removed the case on purpose. Now, it was still on the report was still there, so I managed to extract the photographs and that sort of thing and get them back on the computer that way. Not the uniform ones. I think they're pretty much gone forever. But all the other ones that went out in the report. But yeah, it was just. It was interesting. Yeah, I'm not going to jump to conclusions and say there was any kind of hacking involved, because it's very easy to get paranoid with this subject. And
yeah, it's still pretty strange though, isn't it? It's that particular file.
It's just that particular case. I was like, really, why is that folder gone and all the other ones are still there? It's probably just coincidence. I'm just going to put it down to that.
Or is it still lurking around somewhere in a file somewhere that you haven't come across yet?
Well, I mean, I knew the names of the files, so I was doing a search on my computer.
Yeah, you can do a search. Yeah, that's right.
And I couldn't find them, so.
Wow.
Unless I renamed them. I don't know.
That's scary though, isn't it? Must worry you.
I mean, it's not outside the realms of questioning that my group and other groups around the country are being monitored and watched by select groups. It's known for years, as you know, some people have got actual evidence of that in the past, that they've been monitoring certain things. I remember seeing an official document many years back. It was a chat show that was on in the UK, and they managed to get to the Freedom of Information Act, the transcript of it. And at the top of the transcript was a list of addresses where this transcript of this program had gone to. And it included the White House, included the Ministry of Defense. It included lots of other kind of very powerful companies, included the CIA. It included other companies that I'd never heard of before, just unknown groups of individuals. Now, why on earth would
the CIA? I wouldn't trust them as far as I'll throw them. Anyway.
Well, yeah. But the fact that they'd requested the transcript from this program that had gone on in the UK of all places. So it wasn't even like it was in the same country. So it shows there that behind the scenes, evidence like that proves essentially that behind the scenes there are people keeping tabs on this subject and what goes on.
Yeah.
But most of the time they don't really care. The majority of cases they don't care whether they go public or not. They're probably thinking that people are going to either not believe it, or they're going to be kind of fence city about it, or they're going to believe it. It doesn't really. Most of the time they're only going to cover up ones involving the military or involving a kind of military exercise of some kind. Now, it was interesting that folder vanished, and this was a classified military case. So, but I'm not going to jump to conclusions and say it was anything.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say I think we're all on this somewhere.
Well, yeah.
If you're in this subject, I think we're all on this somewhere.
Yeah, and I don't mind that at all. It doesn't really.
No, that's right.
They've never kind of interacted with me in a negative way or told me not to do what I'm doing or anything like that.
No.
It would take quite a bit to kind of stop me from doing what I'm doing, because I kind of feel like, in a way, it's my duty to do what I do now. I've been doing this so long now, and I knew right back from growing up, through my teens and that it'd be amazing to be on the front lines with this subject. And
absolutely.
Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. Anybody can be an investigator. It just requires time and effort, and also just kind of knowledge that is gained through speaking with people and learning about the different things that are seen and the alternatives, the alternative explanations for certain things.
Yeah. Well, that's one of my biggest regrets, Dave. What I used to do when I was growing up. I mean, I first came into the subject when I was probably about 16.
Yeah,
as probably most of us did. And but all I used to do was save like newspaper cuttings and put them in scrapbooks and all that sort of stuff. I never really sort of got into but I wish now that I'd got further into doing investigations and stuff right from back then.
Yes.
I mean, really, I've fallen into this radio show that's by accident, as it happens, for over the last few years. But I really wish that I'd done a lot more research in my younger years than what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I mean, like most of us, we've all just been sort of interested in the subject and followed it and stuff like that.
Fascinated. I've always been fascinated in other areas of the paranormal as well. Just the mysteries of the world. I've always believed that there's a lot more than what mainstream science admits is going on around the world.
Absolutely.
And UFOs is just one aspect of that. Now, there's obviously, it's like a big interlocking puzzle. There's all sorts of cross between UFOs and other areas of the paranormal, especially when you get into the contact phenomena, all sorts of paranormal elements to that, and people experiencing things which you'd usually put down to kind of ghost type phenomena instead of UFOs, and you wouldn't even associate it with UFOs. It's only the fact that they're having these experiences alongside.
That's an interesting fact. I'm going to ask you something now.
Yes.
Do you see any connections between other paranormal events? That sort of coincide with UFOs, because I don't know what your opinion is, but I've found a lot of connections now between UFO events and other paranormal events. I couldn't see those connections years ago, but because I've spoken to lots of people like yourself and other people I've had on the show, and I've also seen these comparisons myself. These things. What's your opinion on that? Do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, especially with contact. Yeah, so with UFO sightings, as in somebody sees something in the distance and it's not interacting with them in any way. Yeah, that seems almost more like accidental. Like they just happen to be at the right place at the right time. when you get contact involved, so people are experiencing visitations or abductions or whatever, in over 85%. The last time I did a count, I sometimes do counts of the cases to find out percentages of different things, and the last time I did a count, over 85% of the contact cases I'd investigated were also experiencing paranormal type events around their home. So be that kind of glowing orbs, small glowing orbs of light seen, electrical failures around their house, moving objects, shadow beings very, very common.
Yeah, like a poltergeist sort of stuff. Yeah.
That's right, and then obviously with shadow beings, they're kind of seeing a kind of humanoid type form, but just kind of like black mist. Now some people will see this like when they're asleep and they wake up. Now it's difficult because you do get elements of sleep paralysis that can cause certain things like that. So you can have visual hallucinations with sleep paralysis, but there's also very, very big differences between contact experiences and sleep paralysis experiences. So with sleep paralysis, for example, individuals never leave the environment that they're in. So if somebody's undergoing sleep paralysis, they may see weird kind of visions around the room. They may hear strange sounds like buzzing and clicking noises. They may feel like their body's being pulled in a particular direction. But what they won't do is they won't lift up off the bed, float through a wall or a window up into a waiting UFO. As soon as you're going away to another environment, it's not sleep paralysis, even though a lot of the time people are paralyzed. Now, I think that crossover is because of the paralysis thing, which I believe is done on purpose to prevent the person from sort of fighting back or hurting themselves, maybe. Now, but again, there's all these kind of misconceptions of contact, because some people believe that with contact, there's always sleep paralysis. Person's always paralyzed. That's not true at all. I've dealt with lots of abduction experiences where people are not paralyzed at all, where they can move freely. And a lot of the time, you find that with those cases, they are more accepting of their experiences. It's almost like the beings trust them more and trust that they're not going to attack them or run off around the ship or whatever. So they don't paralyze them. That's just a theory I've got. It's not necessarily true. It's just something I've noticed with the cases. So it might be that they do it to prevent, if a person's panicking or everything, they'll shut them down so they can't move and escape from the experience, which of course can be very traumatic to the individual. Probably the most troubling and difficult part of what I do is with speaking with people that have really been deeply affected by the subject. It's far more serious than the TV put out. It breaks relationships apart. I've dealt with cases like that. I've dealt with cases where people have had ongoing depression from it and lasting phobias, sometimes related to their experiences directly. And it really does mess with people. And because they can't even because even their family or friends can't really relate to what they're experiencing because they haven't had experiences themselves, it's very, very difficult for people. And it's sometimes a lot of people, when they speak with me, they just like the fact that I don't take the mick out of them. I don't call them a nutter or anything. And I talk with them in all seriousness about their experiences, and again, I won't try to push them down any particular viewpoints or anything. I'll just tell them how their experiences fit into the wider contact phenomena and let them make their own minds up on whether they're experiencing alien beings or whether it's something else entirely.
Yeah. I know one of the cases you dealt with, funny enough, I did mention to this off air. I've just done a show with Dave, who was a part of the Cosmosis group.
Yes.
And you were involved in that, weren't you, for a few years back?
Yeah, it was a big case. Really, his report has about 30 or so experiences in it, which is quite a lot. It's the length of a small book. His case report is. It's him and his friends. It was interesting because when I spoke with him, it kind of branched out to his local friends and then other acquaintances that had also been kind of other witnesses in some of his experiences. And some of the things that he'd experienced were very impressive. Yeah, so up close visitations by Nordics, humanoid beings. And also other bizarre incidents. I don't know. He probably went over the landing incident with the line of humanoids seen in the field. Yeah, that's right. Now that's really fascinating. I mean, what was going on with that incident? Very interesting.
Well, so a lot of people would say because of it was in a rock and roll band sort of thing. There's always drugs involved and that sort of stuff. But
But yeah, I mean, you could say that, but I mean, obviously, somebody could kind of label that with Dave. But in talking with him about his experiences, he definitely wasn't on drugs when when he had these experiences, and he was with other witnesses. Yeah, who the second witness from that incident with the line of humanoids. Yeah, I actually got to speak with him about 5 or 6 years later. I'd just gone to visit because we kept in touch. Yeah. So sometimes when these bigger cases, I become friends with the individuals and I keep in touch with them over the years. And I think I'd gone there to see it. Maybe I'd even gone to see Cosmosis play. It might have been a Cosmosis gig actually. And I'd gone there to see them and some other bands play. And the other witness from that incident happened to be there on that particular night. And I interviewed him and added his testimonial evidence to the case report. Now, there was no, so without any warning, again, it wasn't like he knew that I was going to ask him in advance. So, I must make sure the details match up with Dave's. No, I just got him across to the bar at one point of the night and just started talking about it. And all the details he came out with matched what Dave told me years before. There's some really interesting elements to that. So, I mean, what essentially they saw, you could put down to some sort of radioactive clear-up operation. Yeah, so they might not necessarily have even been alien if you're just looking at it how they were at a distance. Yeah, because they were seeing a line of human-like people in what appeared to be hazmat type suits. But here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, they both got that. They got a psychic vision of one of the beings' faces up close, right next to their face. Yeah. And a telepathic message in their mind. So straight away, that aspect of it, I'll tell you that it's not.
It makes it strange, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I've actually dealt with other cases where that exact same thing has been reported. So you get these little details that come out from cases, yeah. And it's not the sort of stuff that they put on X-Files and things you get from watching TV and that, yeah. It's detailed elements of contact experiences that match up across cases. There's actually a case at the moment that I'm investigating. I can't tell you too much about it because it's literally ongoing at the moment. But it's involving a lady from Finland who's got in touch, and she's had numerous experiences since childhood. But she's had a couple of experiences which I believe are screen memories of visitations from probable greys. So a lot of the time with screen memories, it tends to be greys. So when people, essentially, for any of your listeners who don't know, I mean, you've probably talked about screen memories before, but it's essentially masking. So they'll appear in another form, and they might sometimes appear like an animal or something familiar to the individual, like a friend or family member, or a doctor. Doctors are quite common, pilots, that sort of thing, which might have links with the fact that they've come down in a craft, of course. It's a fascinating aspect of the contact phenomena, and I've actually given an entire talk on screen memories in depth because it's a particular aspect I find really fascinating and interesting. What's exactly is going on with it and why is it happening? But I mean, so with that animals thing, she'd had a couple of experiences where she saw 3 animals together, and it wasn't always the same animal. It was the first time I think she said it was wolves. And the second time it was 3 foxes, yeah. And she said that when she saw them, it was like time slowed down to a crawl, almost maybe stopped, yeah. And they walked across the path in front of her. And she said the central one, it turned and looked at her, and she got a psychic vision of its face right up in front of her face, exactly like Dave talked about in Vista. So
yeah, you do hear that quite a bit, actually.
Yeah,
like you said.
Yeah, so it's kind of like some sort of psychic projection. Like the animals weren't there next to her, but for whatever reason, she was seeing it. Maybe the direct interaction there. Now, it's my belief that in both of those experiences, it wasn't wolves and it wasn't foxes. It was 3 probable grey beings, and they were just masking their appearance. Maybe physically, so once she was there, she actually saw animals, or maybe it's just her recollection that's got the mask. Maybe she saw greys at the time, but when she thinks back to it, she sees animals in their place. We don't really know. How do you quantify that?
There's probably people listening to this show now. They're thinking, that this is happening to them. I mean, obviously, if anyone wants to get in touch with this show and talk about anything like that, I can put you in touch with Dave, actually.
I'm more than happy to pick up cases from anywhere, for whether historic or new. The when they've happened or where they've happened is irrelevant to the reality of the subject. Yeah. So it might be something from your childhood.
We'll get your details at the end of the show.
Of course.
Everyone can sit. But I'll tell you what, Dave. Did you have any sort of experiences as a child or growing up?
Not directly. My first unusual experiences was one of my houses. I went to Plymouth University, and while I was there, one of my share houses, there was a number of ghost type incidents that happened. which I can go. I know we're branching away from UFOs and aliens a minute, but I can.
No, it's fine. Anything
yeah.
paranormal on the show's fine.
Sure, yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I just moved into a new house halfway through the to make a kind of house change halfway through, and there was three other boys then and one girl, so quite a busy share house. And when and these incidents all happened in the initial weeks, but there's probably people listening now thinking, "Oh, it's a practical joke. They're just mucking you around," you know.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was that with these. So the first incident happened. It wasn't even that impressive. It was just that we had a lounge with an adjoining kitchen on the side, just a doorway straight through between the two. Yeah, and I'd just been in the kitchen, just kind of doing the washing up, and we had a shelf above the sink with line of beer glasses on or whatever. And I just put a glass back up on there and everything. Went back through to the lounge, and I hear this thud on the floor. So what was that? So I go back through to the kitchen, and this one of the pint glasses is in the middle of the kitchen floor here. Hadn't broken, but it was just down the floor. I was like, I don't get there. I was thinking, you know, if it had let's say there were soap suds on the bottom and it slid or whatever, it would have dropped off and fallen into the sink. Yeah, it wouldn't have gone.
And probably smashed.
Well, yeah. So it was kind of like it had leapt off the shelf, but I didn't see it happen yet. So I was like, okay, whatever. You don't really, you know, you just dismiss it, don't you? Just put it back up there, go in the lounge, carry on. So I think it was within 1 or 2 weeks of most of this. 3 of them had gone out for the night, yeah. And there was me and another chap called Steve. We're sitting in the lounge, just watching telly. Definitely nobody else in the house, right? It was quite a big house. All of a sudden, thud, 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 thud. Yeah, it was the sound of running footsteps. God, talking about it makes my hair stand up on it. It was so clear. It was so full on. Yeah, it was a sound of somebody running along the landing. Yeah, straight away. What do you think? You think there's a burglar or something inside the house? Yeah, we just stopped dead. It's silent. I just put the volume off on the TV, and I'm just listening, and there's nothing yet. It's just silence. And Steve he won't even move out the chair. He was like, I'm not going up there yet. So I'm peeping around the door, and it's just completely quiet. They go up there. There's nothing. There was no window open. There was no sign that anybody had ever been there. But it was definitely not creaks in an old house or anything like that. It was thud, thud, thud. You could pretty much hear, you know, feel it vibrating the ceiling. It was that full on. So that happened, and I was pretty convinced that was something unusual. So all the time I stayed in the property, I didn't hear it again. So I don't think it was like an echo for next door or something like that, because you'd hear it again, you know, logically. And
it was too big to be a mouse or anything like that by the sound of it.
Yeah, it would have been a hell of a mouse. Yeah. So again, another week or so goes by at most, and another incident happens, and it's again in the lounge. Again, 3 of them had gone out for the night, but this time there was me and another housemate, also called Dave. There's quite a few people called Dave.
Yeah, they're all Daves here. Thousands of them.
There is. They were taking over. So anyway, we're in the lounge watching TV, and we go through to the kitchen about sort of no longer than 10 seconds. When we come back, so on top of our telly in the lounge, we had it was a vase, yeah, it was a plastic vase with fake flowers in, because they don't trust students to water plants, right? So they put fake ones on there. So
I don't trust my wife either.
So we've gone through, and we're watching telly as the TV was on. We got through the kitchen for no more than 10 seconds. We come back in the lounge, yeah, and the vase is in front of the television screen, as in it's jumped down from on top of the TV to sitting in front of the screen, which is still on, yeah. I was just like, wow. So I turned to David, I'm like, you do that. Now, I knew he hadn't, because I knew he'd been in the kitchen with me, yeah, but you're trying to kind of rationalize it, you know, and he's just like, no. And I was like, don't you think that's impressive? And he wasn't even that bothered yet. It was like he was like, wow, whatever, you know. I was like, okay. So I just go up there and put it back on the telly, yeah. And it definitely wasn't like Patrick or one of the others hiding in their own room and, oh, let's trick Dave or anything like that. They'd gone out. They were definitely not there. Now, that was it, yeah. I was almost expecting more stuff to continue to happen, because I was like, there's something really going on here. It's like this mischievous thing, like poltergeist type stuff going on. And I was like, are we going to get anything else happening after that? It was nothing, it just can't write down yet. But whatever it was, those 3 incidents all happened in kind of quick succession. Whether it was me entering the house, that was the difference. That was the upheaval. So people often say that poltergeist type stuff happens with a change in the environment. Well, the change was me joining the house, yeah. But
yeah.
But I'm pretty certain that it wasn't a practical joke orchestrated by the other house. So those were my ghost experiences. You could say they were not amazingly impressive, but still unexplainable, really. And I moved forward to 2009, which coincidentally the same year that I became chairman for Birmingham UFO Group. So up until that point, I'd never seen anything I could say was a UFO at all. Yeah, you can occasionally see like lights in the distance and that sort of thing. But obviously, if you're seeing a light in the distance, it could be anything technically unidentified, isn't it? So it is a UFO. But I've never seen anything that I could genuinely say was something unexplained. On this, in the summer of 2009, I'd been chairman of the group for about a couple of months, right? I went down to Warminster in Wiltshire for a conference. It was a paranormal conference called Weird. So it was the Weird 2009 Paranormal Conference. So they had some speakers were on UFOs and other ones were on ghosts. And
I might have even been there, Dave.
It may have been. Yeah, it was quite a good one. Yeah, it did run for a number of years. And of course, Wiltshire is famous for crop formations, obviously as well, and it's also famous for many sightings, especially around Warminster. Of course, we had the Warminster flap in the late 70s to mid 80s, where loads of people reported activity. And since then, the area has still been a hotbed for UFO activity. So I've spoken with numerous people over the years who've had some very impressive sightings down there in that neck of the woods. So this was a 2-day conference, and to split up the 2 days, they decided to do a skywatch on the Saturday night. Yeah, and where they decided to do it was up on Cradle Hill, which is famous for skywatching. It's a really known place. Lots of people often go up there for skywatching because it's got a really nice, clear view of the surrounding area, and it's just north of Warminster town. Yeah, so we'd gone up there, and because it was publicised for the conference, yeah, there was a load of people up there. There was about 50 people. There were some TV cameras and all sorts, right? Now it's right next to MOD owned land, so you've got a clear view in all directions, and just to the north, you just reach a borderline where you're not allowed to walk any closer because it's military owned. Yeah, so because of that, you're kind of expecting to see military aircraft and that sort of thing from time to time in the sky, but there really wasn't that much aircraft at all in the sky, civilian or military, really. It got to about 11 o'clock at night, and most people had gone home by this point. I'd say there was about 20 people left, which included Malcolm Robinson from Scotland, the Scottish researcher. CE4, I don't know if you know CE4, they were UFO themed.
Yes, yeah, I know them. I know them all. Yeah,
yeah.
We lost one recently. Brian, he died recently.
Oh, did he? Sorry to hear. Yeah. So they were up there, and there was a bunch of other people left up there who'd been attending the conference. It was a really nice, clear night. So the stars were out, and you could see really well in all directions. There hardly any clouds at all. Really lovely. And it got to about, I'd say about 11:30, and somebody said there's a jet coming in. So we looked to the south, and sure enough, there's a white light in the distance moving our direction. It looks about the size of a kind of light aircraft, and it's got a white light on it. Can't see any other navigation lights. I'm thinking, okay, it's probably just the angle I'm viewing it at. Yeah, it's coming towards us, and all of a sudden, this white light flares up really bright. And boom, it's up like this. And it doesn't go on off like a strobe. It just stays really, really bright. Yeah, everybody's like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" A couple of seconds later, this white light dies back down again, and then I can see like this dark turquoisey coloured lights on. Really weird, like you get lime green lights on a plane. Yeah, they're like bright green. Yeah, it wasn't like that at all. It was like somewhere between blue and green and kind of darker, like a dark turquoise colour. Yeah, and it's still coming nearer, and all of a sudden, this white light's coming up again like this. So it's kind of going on, staying lit, off. As it gets nearer, we realise there's no sound coming from the thing at all, right? Now, we could hear planes on the horizon here, after sound travels really well after dark, doesn't it? And we could hear kind of civilian aircraft on the distance on the horizon earlier on. But this thing, whatever it was making no sound whatsoever. And it was only about 300 foot up, I'd say. It wasn't really high. I was trying to get in as much information as I could. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have a decent night vision scope on me, and nobody else left up there had decent night vision equipment either. So we couldn't get a look at exactly the shape of this thing. I could just see this dark thing that was kind of blocking out the stars. It seemed about the size of a light aircraft, yeah. But there was no sound coming from it. And it came in, it had no other navigation lights on it, yeah. And it comes in slowly, kind of over there, and we're all watching it. And it arcs away and then goes off into the distance. And even minutes later, when it was at the horizon, you could still see this white light coming up like this and then vanishing again. Now, I interviewed numerous people who've been up there and seen that, yeah, and not one person could identify it. I've got a friend who served in Iraq, served in the military. He said it doesn't match with any known military drone or military aircraft at all. And obviously, most military aircraft have the same kind of red, green, and white normal navigation type lights on. And it's unexplained to this day. It's technically UFO. It wasn't an amazing sighting. It wasn't like a domed disc, or it didn't land or see beings or anything like that. But it was an unidentified flying object. So yeah.
So what did they give you the show? Because you were all there to see something.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, is this some sort of clever orchestrated hoax because they know the Skywatch is going on? Yeah. You know, like somebody's found out about it and they're doing it. Yeah. But whatever this thing was, it was quite sizable and it was flying fast. It wasn't gliding along slowly like a balloon. It was going speedy, and it was big and silent, strange, with lights on it that didn't match any known aircraft. So
yeah, that's the thing with drones now. You love when you get jokes like that going on, don't you? If they know the Skywatch is going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure that there are people who we've done numerous Skywatches over the years. Actually, that leads on nicely to the other sighting, which is one I didn't see myself, but it's one I could have seen. We actually had some sightings that took place on our latest Skywatch, which was last year. I organised a Skywatch Cannock chase with another paranormal group called Uprising. We've got a Facebook group, and the owners of Uprising they come down regularly to Bufog to our meetings. So we decided we'd do this joint Skywatch, and both groups would kind of combine forces and go out to the location. And the location we chose was an area of Cannock Chase. It's quite near to the two military graveyards. And it was just nice open flat fields there. It wasn't particularly elevated. I've been at Cannock Chase numerous times before, and we've chosen kind of higher altitude, but it was nice and open. So a load of us turned up for that, and it was a very, very fun evening. We were worried it was going to chuck it down, but it actually sort of behaved itself, sort of. It was a bit cloudy. So about 10:30, a bunch of us who were there decided we wanted to go and check out one of these military graveyards after dark. Yeah, so we all, and I go with them. Yeah, so we go off wandering with our torches. Yeah, just to check it out because you want to see what it looks like after dark, and obviously there's that kind of spooky element, you know, and that sort of thing on the Skywatch. So we left about 15 or so people back at the field. Yeah, and lo and behold, that's when the sightings occurred. When half of us weren't there. Oh, great. So I didn't actually find out about the sightings until the following day. Because one of the witnesses who'd seen the first thing, she'd left by the time we got back. They'd actually gone home, and then she told me about it on email afterwards. Yeah, the other witnesses were still there, but they didn't mention it at the time because it was just kind of quite a brief sighting, and conversation just went off elsewhere. Yeah, essentially what was seen was orange orbs. Yeah, but first of all, there were two of them in quick succession. Two completely different directions in the sky. So the first sighting was by the lady who was coincidentally she'd had contact experiences, very fascinating case, and her and her husband had come on down for the Skywatch, and she saw this orange orb appear in the sky and then do the sharp arc downwards, boom, goes down like that, and a sharp arced angle down into the trees. Yeah, so very fast, and not really how a Chinese lantern would behave, or a flare. So I've seen flares before. We actually had somebody set one off on one of our previous Skywatches and then try to convince me that it wasn't a flare. I was like, come on, who's brought the flare along? Yeah, so obviously they glide slowly, then they drift across. Yeah, and if a Chinese lantern, when it drops, it's going out. Yeah, it's gone out. Yeah, so there's no glowing orange light anymore. It's just a black shape that you usually can't see after dark. Yeah. This thing, whatever it was, glowing bright orange, comes down in a sharp arc. Seems too sharp to be a meteorite, yeah, and it really wasn't. There wasn't enough kind of visibility for it to be a meteorite, unless it happened to be one that was very up close and happened to land in the trees right near where the Skywatch was going on. Yeah, within a minute of that, there's another sighting, but it's completely different direction. I didn't realise there were different directions until I analysed it on a map and I realised they were completely facing completely different directions. And this one was seen by several people, including James, who's one of our other investigators for the group, happened to be one of the other witnesses of it. And he said it was moving around erratically. Again, it only appeared for a couple of seconds. It was just a bright orange light that moved around like this, backwards and forwards erratically, and then vanished again. So minor, yeah, massively minor, nothing spectacular in any way, shape or form. But again, not really acting how a Chinese lantern or a flare would act. And the wrong color for anything else. And let's say it was a drone, where you'd have to fly the drone off. Let's say there was somebody trying to trick us by hiding in the woods and launching something. You'd have to fly it out of there. It wouldn't just kind of do that and then vanish. So it was weird. Yeah, I mean, it was UFO sightings seen on our Skywatch. Brilliant. But yeah, I wasn't there to see it, unfortunately.
No, but it's left you with the puzzle about as to what was it?
Well, exactly. Yeah, it was unidentified, and they were flying in our objects. Yeah, I mean, they didn't seem particularly big, so I don't think even if there were something anomalous, I don't think they would have been manned. But a lot of these objects that are seen are smaller objects. Obviously, a lot of the ones that are reported by the American military at the moment, by the US Navy, with the Pentagon emissions, seem to be smaller drone-like objects, but they seem to be kind of monitoring their ships and intercepting them in locations where they just really shouldn't be able to, like miles and miles out to sea, and apparently the objects hang around for like hours on end and that sort of thing on radar. And obviously a drone only has so much flight in it before it has to land. So,
actually, I was going to say something about it. You mentioned about the government and everything. Do you think they're actually drip feeding us to a disclosure, basically?
I don't think full disclosure with this subject is going to happen. I think the only way full disclosure with this subject will happen is if the beings themselves decide that they want it, and kind of do something big.
But they do seem to be drip feeding things out now and again, don't they?
I think what they're doing, I think they're keeping the American public happy. I genuinely think that's what it's for. I think it's for, oh, you told us that we weren't doing anything. You told us we were denying it all. Here you go. We've given you some stuff. Yeah. But they're giving you like a small part of the picture. But the trouble is that they genuinely don't know yet, because the American military is so compartmentalized, as our own is, so they probably genuinely don't know. Even at the head of the defense, even Chris Mellon, etc., and he's actually said that very thing on interviews. He said that there could well be other areas within the Pentagon that know a lot more about this than even he's not privy to.
Yeah, like black ops areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's so split up. So, but I believe that there is clandestine groups of individuals. Call them Majestic 12, call them Men in Black, call them whatever you like. There are big cases on record that have happened, like the Varginha incident in Brazil, where there are unknown figures, seemingly human people, turning up in black suits, almost always black suits. They bribe witnesses money to either shut up about it or even lie about what they've seen. Now, again, these are specific incidents. They don't often happen. There's less than 10% of the contact cases I've investigated have had Men in Black experiences in them, but there are some of at least 20 cases I can think of over the years which have had Men in Black type experiences. Some of them really, really interesting and compelling. So I think that there's something going on with it, and a lot of the time it's not you must not tell people about this. You saw the light of Venus. It's not like that at all. It's more like they ask them questions about their experiences. It's almost like they're trying to find out more about the beings by speaking with people who they know have had contact. So less the kind of, sometimes there's a bit of reverse psychology in there, so to kind of keep quiet, but they don't often kind of just say the good old classic, you're not allowed to talk about this. If you do, we'll shoot you. I mean, there's some military cases where they seem to have done that with the witnesses. It's.
I think in the early days, like the Roswell things and all that, it seems to have happened, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean that was a real big one. I mean Roswell. I'm absolutely convinced that Roswell was a crashed, as a lot of people are in the UFO community. There are over 300 witnesses have gone on the record. 300 witnesses that have all said that it wasn't Project Blooming Mogul, or it wasn't a weather balloon, or it wasn't anything human. It was a crashed object with bits that fell off over the ranch, all over the blooming place. And then beings, and I mean even some of the top commanders from the military bases have got, on their deathbed confessionals. Now, why on earth would you sully your family's name by making up nonsense about it being aliens if it's not?
Absolutely. I mean, the simple thing to me that says that there's something very wrong in what they say is they've changed their mind as to what it was over the years so many times. If it was something, then it would be that, just a full stop and that was it.
Exactly.
But they've tried to cover it up several times. When someone comes up with something, they say, "Oh no, it wasn't." No, they started like this Project Mogul. They wasn't that 10 years later, wasn't it?
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, and they were saying that the bodies that people had seen were these crash test dummies, which. Apparently, there's no official record of them being launched until sort of mid-50s, but that's not to say that they couldn't have. Right? I'm not saying that's proof, but what I will say is proof is the countless witnesses saying, no, we saw things that were being autopsied by doctors, and one of them was still alive, and they were showing it to soldiers, and those soldiers were deeply spooked out, forever after by what they saw. I mean, some of those witnesses who talked about the bodies and the autopsies, obviously they had accidents. didn't they? You know,
Yeah.
in very mysterious circumstances. Very convenient. Yeah. You
Yeah,
know,
and also we must
people.
point out it's not that film that came out in the mid-80s, the Alien Autopsy. I think we know now that
Oh
was
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
fake. Yeah,
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
but unfortunately, there's some people out there still think it's real.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've seen the evidence for it being a constructed thing. You know, I've spoken with Spiros Milias, the guy.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine actually.
Yeah, lovely chap. And yeah, I'd say the evidence weighs very much in favour of it being a set of thing. Now, obviously, what confused some people was the odd design for the being itself in that footage. And I remember seeing it because it was one of the first people in the UK to actually see it. I've gone to one of the UFO magazine conferences. You may have been there too. It was at Leeds, and they were showing it for the first time. It was Santelli or somebody on Santelli's behalf, and they showed it at the conference. And we were the first people to see it in the UK before they released it.
Yeah, I think that was before Spiros even knew about it.
yeah, probably. Yeah, I think it was. And essentially, I the first time I saw it, I didn't think it was real, but I did think that it could have been like a snuff video. I really genuinely thought that maybe what we were looking at was a dead girl that they'd modified to look like an alien, and it was just very creepy footage. You know, it's I can understand why some people were, you know, thought it was compelling when they saw it, but since then obviously we've got the actual photographs of the actual model casts and things, and yeah, it's
so obvious. Yeah, because I mean Spiros told me, you probably heard the same story as well. He was in Japan actually when all of a sudden it came on the television. And he was drinking a cup of coffee, and he spat his coffee out because when this film came out, he knew nothing about it. He basically done this thing that it was done as a joke, actually, apparently originally, and he kind of forgot about it, and all of a sudden it started appearing on the TV, and Santelli had been putting it out as the real thing, saying it was a real military
and a lot of money off it too. Yeah,
I'd probably that's right. That's what Spiros didn't get. I mean, I think he did a lot of that at his own expense.
Yes,
and but of course, there's still people out there. They still say it's the real thing, but
I mean, I think it
definitely isn't.
With most pieces of video, you've got that. You know, you've got that kind of element. You know, are we being duped? You know, is it kind of a double duping? You know, it's you know, are they all the key witnesses involved? Are they all working for the CIA?
Yeah.
And is it real?
It's like Spiros says, though. He says there could well have been a real, genuine film.
Yeah.
But the one that he made is not it.
Yes.
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
That's
seems to have filmed at the time. I mean, they would have filmed back then. They would have had cameras on those bodies, and everything, obviously. Yeah. But so somewhere in the depths of the Pentagon is that footage, but also so is the bodies themselves.
Yeah.
Never mind the footage. They've got the actual things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've got to admit, when I first saw it back in about 82 or 83 or whatever it was, I was kind of taken in. I thought, oh, this looks real, you know, definitely genuine and all that.
Yes.
And then you get to a point to think, oh, I'm sitting on the fence now. I'm not quite sure if it's real or not.
Yeah. I found some of the hands thing. I mean, the thing is, I've spoken with so many contactees over the years. I've investigated literally hundreds of contact cases from around the world now, and almost always the beings have got 4 fingers, not 6. I'm not saying there's not some cases on record where they've got 6 fingers.
He did that on purpose, though, didn't he? So he wanted to make it. So
well, that's it. Yeah, because they were trying
different to the normal reports.
That's it. I think they were doing that on purpose. Yeah, to just kind of get people talking. You know, is it real? Isn't it? You know, this sort of thing. Yeah. There were some interesting design decisions, shall we say, with the footage, but it was certainly creepy and interesting.
Definitely.
There've been a number of them that come out over the years. I mean, we've got the alien interview video as well. I remember that from the past as well. The one with it in the darkened room, which I would still say is one of the most compelling bits of video that I've seen reportedly showing a live ET. It's never categorically been disproven. It hasn't been proven, but it hasn't been disproven either. And a lot of people are suspicious about the fact it's in a darkened room because they're like, that's a lot easier for puppeteers. But obviously they've showed it to certain contactees, including Whitley Strieber, who I certainly believe is a genuine contactee, and he believes it's real. And he's seen them with his own eyes. He's seen the greys with his own eyes numerous times, and he believes that on that video is an actual living grey. There's other contactees as well who saw it, who again back it up and believe it's real. And they showed it to special effects artists as well. And the special effects artists, you could see from their reactions on that footage, you know, they were quite impressed by it. They were like, "This is if it is a fake, it's well done." You know, the way the being's moving and things.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I've spoken to Spiros about that particular film, and he was actually an expert in filmmaking, as you know, and he says it is a fake.
He thinks it's fake, yeah.
But there you go. It's one of those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
It's just a matter of opinion, and
It's kind of
you're left
kind
with
of
at the end of the
elusive.
day, you just don't know.
That's it, yeah. That's the problem with video and photographic evidence, yeah. And that's why I think that testimonial evidence is almost as important, if not more important, than it. Especially in this modern age, yeah, with all the CGI and that sort of thing. Yeah, there's fakes being put out left, right, and centre. I mean, a classic one that we had out in recent years was Skinny Bob, the Skinny Bob video, which you're probably aware of. Now that one looked very, very compelling. It looked really realistic, and nobody's ever owned up to actually doing it either. The actual creator of that is not known.
Yeah.
All that we know is it is definitely CGI, even though it looks hyper realistic.
Yes, yeah.
But there's a lot of people out there who believe it's genuine, and you can see in the comments people are going, they're like, "Wow, this is the evidence," and it's not. They've analysed it, and the CGI. It just shows how good CGI is getting these days.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very difficult. We've only got to see the Avengers movies to see how good it is.
Well, that's it, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Well, it's like the Bigfoot, the Bigfoot film. When you see the Bigfoot walking across the street, the road,
Yes.
not the road, in the forest. I mean, that's never been said to be. That's never been proved to be fake, does it?
It's never been proved to be fake. There's some interesting elements to that, actually. So I do have an interest in Bigfoot and that as well. Not like to the same extent, of course. And I've decided to focus, so we say, on UFOs, but I've still got a passing interest in other areas of the paranormal. Yeah, that footage has always impressed me, and I've seen a proper detailed examination of that footage done by a UK Bigfoot researcher, Paul Vera. I don't know if you know Paul Vera is
I've heard the name, yeah.
Yeah, UK Bigfoot expert. He did a full lecture on that, just on that video, and there's elements to it, like the fact that the thing's female and actually has mammaries, and the way that it's walking does not look like a human walk and that sort of thing. The way the legs are moving and things. There's little elements in it that point away from it just being a guy in a gorilla suit, you know. But again, you can't tell. Very occasionally you get these videos. A lot of the time you have people on both sides. You know, you have some people thinking it's real, some people think it's not. Other people can't decide either way. The only really compelling, or shall we say intriguing, video that I've ever had given me over the years came as part of a big contact case from Droitwich that I investigated. This, you may have seen this piece of footage with the lady in the bed. If you haven't, I'll be going through it anyway. Essentially, in late 2010, she had 2 abduction experiences. And this is a really big case. Yeah, she's had a lifetime of experiences right back to childhood. But she, like many experiences, she pushed those experiences aside. They were too weird and out of the ordinary, so she just ignored them and pretended they weren't there. There was all sorts of stuff like psychic premonitions and lots of different things. But in late 2010, she had 2 abductions in the space of 1 week. And these were kind of her trigger experiences. And by that, I mean, there were experiences that was quite obvious something strange had happened, and it got her to readdress and look at the previous things that had happened in her life. But the second experience was captured on camera, or could have been captured on camera. I'll go. Shall I go through in detail what happened with the 2 abductions? Yeah.
Yeah, sure, please. Yeah.
There's some really interesting elements to them. Actually, it's one of the cases I talk about quite a lot over the years, because it's such an intriguing case and it has lots of elements to it. So it involved a family. Yeah, they're on the outskirts of Droitwich, in a kind of rural area overlooking sort of open farmers' fields. And in I think it was the 3rd of December or something like that. Yeah, I think that's right. 3rd of December 2010. So she was finding it hard to sleep. She had no interest in the UFO subject, by the way. Yeah, so they didn't know what to tell me or what I was expecting to hear or anything like that. So she was finding it hard to sleep. Her husband had gone to bed and she was just there lying around. It's about 1 a.m, can't sleep. Gets up to check on her daughter's. Her daughter in a separate side bedroom, walks on through there to have a look. Now, at that point, they didn't have a curtain on her daughter's window. They'd just leave the window open. And she had a look happened to glance outside. In the distance, over some trees in the distance, she sees this. Well, it's kind of similar to your own sighting, David. She saw an orange oval-shaped object, and it's just moving slowly to the left. And initially, she thinks it's a plane crashing. She's like, there's a plane crash going on, but she realizes it's moving too slow. Yeah, so it can't be a plane. But then she's trying to think: is it like a light reflecting from the room somewhere, like something electronic in the room? You know, so she's not like immediately like it's an alien spacecraft or anything like. You know, she's like, could it be something mundane? Yeah. So she's looking around to see if she can find reflections, and she even holds up she gets a A4 piece of paper and puts it on the window, and she can see the light still coming through it, so she knows it's coming from outside. So she looks around at her daughter. When she looks back, the object's no longer in the distance. It's now jumped, and it's about 100 yards away from the house, and it's also right down near the ground. What it looked like was a long bank of lights. She couldn't really see there, but beyond the lights, she could just see that there was something there with glowing lights along it. Yeah. Now, at this point, instead of wake her daughter up or wake her husband up or ring the police or run and hide, she accepts it and goes back to bed. So there's a UFO in close proximity to her own house. And instead of react like the way that you would normally react, she just thinks, okay, and gets back into bed. This is an element of contact that turns up again and again and again. This kind of altered frame of mind. People are really complacent to what's going on here, which is one of the reasons why there's very few photographs. So people are sort of saying, oh, with all the mobile phone cameras, if people are really being taken by these beings, how come they're not all taking shots of them and that sort of thing? And this is why, because when they experience contact, they're not acting normally. So she goes back to bed, and she's lying there. She thinks she closes her eyes, doesn't think she drops off. She's just lying there in darkness. All of a sudden, she realizes she opens her eyes. She's no longer in her room, but she can't see anything. She's lying down. It's pitch black everywhere. The only thing she can see is her eldest daughter, who's up here by her right shoulder. Yeah. And her daughter leans in and says, don't worry, Mum, it's your turn next. They aren't going to hurt you, right? And she doesn't know. And she's like, but before she gets a chance to talk with her about what she means, she feels this kind of rushing sensation, almost like she's going through a tunnel of some kind. And then she's in this totally new environment. Yeah, she finds herself. She believes she's naked. She's paralyzed from the neck down, and she can move her head a tiny little bit like this, but not much. All around her are glowing grid lines, essentially like yellow laser lines in square shapes all around, almost like Tron or something. And everywhere she can look, she can just see these glowing yellow squares. But she realizes that there's beings around her, but she can't see them. She wants to kind of see them. She can sense that there's something being up here behind her left shoulder. And then she senses that there's a load of small ones kind of standing around her floating body. She doesn't feel like she's on a bench or anything. But again, she can't look down to see them because she can't arc her neck enough. Now, why she knows they're short, who knows? She just kind of senses that it's short, childlike things. And she starts to feel and touching her body, like going down her body like this. And she had a bad back at the time, and she was worried that they were going to hurt her back, and touch her on the spine or whatever and hurt her. And in response to that worry, she hears a telepathic voice in her head say, don't worry, we're not going to hurt your back. So it's kind of like they could hear her thoughts and were responding directly to her thoughts. They perform some kind of examination where they go and checking her and everything. This goes on a short period. And then all of a sudden, in the distance, there's this white rectangle of light opens up off to the left, and she can see it because she can kind of look downwards a bit, like looking down her body. She can see over there. Standing in this light is her eldest son. He's quite a tall guy. He's about 7.5 foot high, I reckon. So at least 7 foot high. Huge guy, absolutely dwarfed me. And I met him when I went around the house to investigate the case. A really nice guy. And he was just there in this experience. He's standing in this doorway, but he's not interacting with her or coming and helping her or anything. He's just standing there staring at her, and she's wondering why on earth he's there and isn't helping her. And this goes on a while, and then she kind of hears some sort of chattering going on. She thinks it was the beings talking to one another, and she could hear this chittering, but couldn't really make out any actual words. She sensed there was a kind of sense of rush, like she wasn't supposed to be there any longer, and she'd overstayed her welcome or something. And then all of a sudden, she's bang, and she's back in her bed, and she just jumps up, and she's in bed, right? Wakes her husband up. She's like convinced it wasn't a nightmare. It feels like really vivid. She remembers all these details. She's like, what on earth was that? What happened? So she wakes her husband up, and her husband's like, oh, it's had a bad dream, settle back down, this sort of thing, Who drops back off and everything, and she manages to settle down to sleep, In the morning, she feels like really anxious about it, and this kind of anxiety kind of starts to build up through the days, and she doesn't want to go to sleep in the room, because she remembers it. And this is obviously another common side effect or after effect of having a contact experience is, you don't want to go back to the location. Stands to reason. A lot of the time that's subconscious, but with this she has conscious memories of pretty much everything, And she also strangely felt like she was pregnant, which is really weird, right? She went and this kind of built up over a couple of days until she actually visited her GP and got her GP to confirm that she wasn't pregnant. And after he confirmed she wasn't pregnant, that feeling kind of went away. It might have something to do with like the hybrid program or something. We don't really know. So she's starting to get more and more panicky about going to sleep in the bedroom. And her husband thinks she's overreacting, and he doesn't really believe what's happened to her. And He just thinks it's a dream or something, yeah. But he happened to make security cameras for a living. He used to put together infrared cameras, yeah. When it went around the house, they had stack loads of like boxes of infrared cameras and stuff, yeah. But with all these cameras around, he's like, well, how about this? We'll set up a camera in the bedroom, and whenever we go off to sleep, yeah, we'll start the camera running, yeah, and nothing will come and get you if you're being watched, will it? Yeah. So it kind of puts her mind at ease, yeah. And she's like, okay. And they try that, and sure enough, it settles her down, yeah. And she starts to kind of be able to sleep normally again, yeah. About 3 days later, yeah, they had this camera running each night, yeah. And in the morning, they kind of, obviously, they don't check the footage. It's hours and hours and hours of them sleeping, yeah. So they just wipe the footage, yeah, and then carry on. Next day, they do the same. About 3 days later, she has a second experience, yeah. So this time she's not awake and sees a UFO or anything like that. She just suddenly finds herself in this other environment. And this is totally different to before, yeah. She said it reminded her a bit like a doctor's office. She said there were wood paneling over the walls and there was some sort of double doorway. She was lying down on, it was more classic in this regard. She was lying down on some sort of flattened bench, yeah. She was unclothed, but had a kind of thin white sheet draped across her body. She sensed again the one up here behind her shoulder. Again, she was paralyzed, yeah. But she sensed that same being was there, the one that had been there before. So there's a kind of link between the two experiences, yeah. To her right, she can look down. She can see this short doctor chap, yeah. He's about 4 foot high. He's got spectacles on. He's got brush back red hair. He's wearing a kind of white doctor's coat, yeah. And he's standing there, look, weird chap. He puts his hands out. He doesn't touch her. He holds his hands a couple of inches above her body, and he starts to move down her body like this, doing some kind of scan of her body. She starts to get telepathic messages in her mind of ailments that she's had either in the past or currently. So it says stuff like, used to have a stomach ulcer a number of years ago, it's gone away. I can see you got bad back and this sort of thing. So she's hearing these messages in her head, and she's very worried he's going to say something bad, like you've got cancer or something, but it doesn't do that. So this scan type situation occurs, and then that's it. That's the end of that experience, yeah. All of a sudden, boom, she's back in the bed again, wakes up, you know, reaches over, and she's really worried. She's convinced something's happened, yeah. Husband's like, nothing, you know, just settle back down, yeah. So she just drops back off to sleep. But in the morning, of course, they've had the camera running, haven't they? So the night, so they're like, what are you going to do? You're going to check the camera to see if anything's unusual on it, yeah. So they start looking through this footage, right? And there's hours and hours of them just lying there sleeping. Gets about 3:33. That's
the problem. You got to go through the whole lot.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're sitting there for hours just looking for stuff. Yeah, gets about 3:33 in the morning, which might be significant or might not be. Yeah, you could say it's just a coincidence, but there's some numeracy type elements that come out through contact experiences sometimes. But yeah, around 3:33 in the morning, yeah, she starts doing this weird thing, like she's in the bed and you can see her lying there, and it's almost like she rolls around and starts arcing her back, yeah, like really high underneath the sheet, yeah, and you can see it kind of bulging up, right, and it's like she's almost like on all, I don't know how to describe it, like she's arcing upwards, yeah, and then all of a sudden it just folds inwards, just ridiculously flat, yeah, and it just sinks in, and it just looks really flat, like it. You can sort of still just about make out the husband, but it's kind of a bit dark across that side of the room, and it's on infrared, yeah. And it's not the best quality, yeah, but he's there, and she's definitely gone, yeah, or seems to have gone, right. And then there's about 14 minutes, right, where there's nothing, there's like no movement at all or anything, yeah, it's just dead flat. And then all of a sudden, the bedclothes kind of shoot up in the air, and when they settle again, she's kind of moving around and stuff, and then settling, she's back, yeah. Now I don't want to be rude, but you know, she's quite a sizable lady, yeah, and it just looks weird. It looks really weird, yeah. Now, in speaking with her and her family, yeah, I've got absolutely no doubt that this is a real piece of video. This is not an orchestrated hoax, yeah. It's been put out online. She actually sent it to the American team, Fact or Faked. I don't know if you've ever seen that program. Yes, they try to prove or disprove. She sent it to them. I kind of warned her off it. I said, you know, you don't need to be doing that. They'll ridicule it and that sort of thing. But she was intrigued. She was like, why not? You know, I'll just see what they think of it, because maybe they'll, you know, they're experts. Maybe they'll know what it is, whatever. She was genuinely intrigued by it. She was also quite traumatized by it because it correlated with the experience. It was the same night as experience. And it's this weird footage. And in a way, it kind of showed her that something might have actually happened to her. And it really spooked her out. She didn't like it one bit, yeah. Now, we tried to get hold of the raw footage off the camera, but it's not built that way. It's not, you can't connect it via USB and get the file off. Yeah, it was a locked security camera. You weren't meant to extract the file. Yeah, they couldn't work out how to do it. So at the time, what they did is they played it on a monitor and they videoed the monitor. Yeah, so it was kind of like second hand. Yeah, so the initial footage that I saw was kind of slightly reduced quality. Yeah, because they were filming it and they were just filming the screen. Yeah, and showing me what was on there. Later on, the Fact or Fake team did manage to crack it in the end. Now, I couldn't. I was trying to crack this. I was trying to get into this file type. It was this really weird file type. I managed to get hold of the file, like the camera, yeah, but it was unreadable with anything. And I even come across some special readers online that were supposed to read it, and they wouldn't read it. Yeah, so I was just like crying out loud because I wanted to get a high quality view of the footage. It didn't really explain it much more. I saw the higher quality version of the footage later on, and it didn't really answer any more questions. It was the same, but it was just a bit sharper. But yeah, they managed to crack it, but because it was kind of done by the TV company, they kept the rights to that. They kept the rights to that cracked footage. Now, interestingly, they said that they couldn't recreate the footage without using camera trickery. So they actually tried to recreate the footage themselves, and they couldn't do a successful job without using like special effects or some kind of contraption inside the bed, you know, like hydraulics or you know, something that sinks in. Now, this is a normal double bed. Some people online, people come up with all sorts of suggestions for what it is, yeah, but they don't know because I was the only one who was there investigating directly, yeah. So first of all, they're not going to understand that the trauma that these experiences cause this lady, and the fact that this was part of a much bigger case. Yeah, I've got no doubt that it's real footage, it's not a hoax. Yeah, what does it show? Right, it either shows her being literally abducted, right, and dematerializing from the bed and then rematerializing. Now, a lot of contact cases where people get taken aboard craft, they describe floating up into the air and through a wall or whatever, through the ceiling. But who are we to say that that's how it always happens? Yeah. It's either that or it's a weird, very weird optical illusion, yeah, where it looks like she's vanished from the bed, but she hasn't, yeah. If it is a weird optical illusion, yeah, that means that she hasn't gone anywhere, which then means that that second abduction didn't happen, yeah. It was just in her head, well, like a dream. But there was all sorts of interesting elements to that and the previous experience, yeah. And don't forget, this is a bigger case, so there's other abductions that occurred both before and also after this experience, yeah. So I was very compelled by the case that it was a genuine contact case. Yeah. Now, the details that came out, some of the details that came out with this were fascinating. So we took a regression hypnotherapist around to their house, and he hypnotized the lady in her own house. I work with a hypnotherapist from time to time with contact cases where there like appears to be like missing memories, and we can take them back. Obviously, it's a very controversial practice, and some people will say that false memories can sink in. But this lady remembered about the majority of the experiences anyway. Yeah, we were just exploring things in a bit more depth. With the first experience, yeah, said about the doorway opening and the sun being there, describes the experience exactly the same. So no further details come out, no bits she's forgotten or anything. She describes the examination procedure. But in the doorway, it's not her son. She says it doesn't look like my son. She described it as like a skeleton. She said it was a thin skeletal figure, and had black teardrop-shaped eyes. She said it was standing there. She said it looked kind. It wasn't speaking with her at all, but it was big. It was like about 8 foot high. So it was a tall, thin grey. And straight after the regression, we got to draw it. So there's a drawing of that being in the report. Now, in her conscious memory, what she was seeing was a screen memory of her son. I'm absolutely convinced. Yeah, it put on the screen memory, maybe because it's tall like her son was. Yeah, maybe that's why it shows that. If you go down the route of screen memories being some kind of thing done on purpose, which I'm not saying 100% that they are, but certainly evidence points that way sometimes. Second experience also had a screen memory because I had the small doctor guy. Yeah, so this was even more interesting. So we were like, describe this small doctor to us, the regressive hypnotherapist says. She said, describe his face. No word of a lie. She says, his face, it looks like a mask. It looks like it wants to fall off. That was the actual word she said. So it was like her mind under hypnosis was seeing past the screen memory, and literally, you know, she was literally seeing past this visage of this doctor that this being was putting up. Yeah. We said, describe the hands. Yeah. She said, the hands are human. And then she said, no, they're not. Said the fingers are too long and too pointy. So it was like under hypnosis, she was breaking past the screen memory and seeing it for what it was, which was very likely a grey. She never saw it fully in its actual form, but the implications there with the short height of it and that sort of thing, and the long pointy fingers and that. It's yeah, really interesting. So there were those details in there. She did also have body marking. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. After the second experience, when she woke up, she had some bruises on her abdomen, which she didn't know where they'd come from. She was pretty certain when she'd gone to bed the night before they weren't there. So there were all these elements that fitted in with this being a genuine abduction experience and as part of a genuine contact case that had gone right back to her childhood. Yeah.
Wow.
So I have to propose that it's real. Now, a lot of people have said, "Oh, she faked it. Oh, there's a gap between the beds. There's 2 single beds pushed together." It wasn't. It was a normal double bed. I investigated the bedroom. I wish I'd taken lots of photos of the room now, because all these questions come from people skeptical of the video.
Yeah.
And I try to answer them as best I can. And all I can say is I was there. I examined the room. It was a normal room. I fully trust the witnesses. I still keep in touch with her from time to time, but she's actually moved away now. Doesn't live in the UK anymore, but occasionally still talk with her. I don't think she's having any experiences any longer. I think they've kind of settled down, at least at the moment, but that's sometimes the way it can go. But the experiences left a lasting impression on her. It wasn't like she was doing this for any fame or fortune. She did talk at a couple of conferences bravely by herself. Sometimes I speak directly with experiences and I work alongside them or do joint talks. I've done numerous times with various people, but with this case, she actually bravely went up on stage at a couple of conferences and talked about it. There was no money involved. It wasn't like she was doing it for the money or anything like that. And I'll take it to my grave that it was a real case. Yeah, really, really compelling.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, we're coming towards the end. I can't let you go until we talk about the game that you've produced.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. People are going to be like, what? So change the subject?
Yeah. We sort of coming up to almost 2 hours there, so
wow.
It's,
yeah, I know how time flies.
The time has flown. Yeah, it's been brilliant actually. But yeah, you developed a game called UFO Wave.
I have, yeah. So
which is available on Amazon.
It is, yeah. Alongside the world of UFOs, I've also got a passion for tabletop gaming. Yeah, so right back to my childhood, I've always been into like board and card gaming, sitting around a table and just playing games directly with family or friends. It's always good fun, especially in this modern era, in this electronic era where everything's virtual and there's a lot of online video gaming goes on and that sort of thing. I still like sitting around a table and playing things directly. And a number of years ago, I decided that what I wanted to do was combine my interests. Now, there's a number of games out there already themed on UFOs, yeah, but only loosely. And most of the time when the subject's covered, it's covered in a very stereotypical way. The aliens have all got laser guns. It's all about like destruction of the planet and that sort of thing, usual sci-fi nonsense, yeah. What I wanted to do was create a game that was authentic to the real UFO subject. But I had a choice between taking down a kind of fun, accessible route or taking it down a kind of very serious route with sort of detailed artwork and that sort of thing. And I decided to go down the kind of fun, accessible route. So we've got a cartoon artwork for the game. Once I come up with the concept, I came up with the name UFO Wave because I was thinking what just kind of it fitted what happens in the game and what you're doing in the game. Once I decided, it took a while to kind of get it to its end level, a number of years. In fact, it went through about 5 different versions of the game before I finally settled on the end thing. Now, the reason for that is I didn't want anybody to think that I'd just taken an existing game and just slapped a UFO skin on it, and just put it out there and ripped off another game. What I believe I've come up with is something that's completely unique. Like I think I've played hundreds of board and card games over the years, and I've never played another game that has the same card mechanics as UFO Wave in it. So after all these different version changes and that sort of thing, I finally came up with something I was genuinely happy with, something that was easy to understand and learn, but at the same time different, and also you could repeat play it and it wouldn't get boring. And I've played the game over 100 times now, and it never gets boring. So so with the artwork, there was an artist I had in mind, and this is a really interesting story of the artist, right? I decided to take it down this cartoon route. I was going to get cartoon artwork because I wanted it to be kind of accessible for people outside of the UFO community. I didn't want it just to appeal to people who knew a lot about UFOs. I wanted to appeal to the wider gaming market as well. Also, I wanted to make it family friendly. That was an important one for me. I've got a 12-year-old daughter, and I wanted her to be able to enjoy the experience and enjoy the game as well. So I wanted it suitable for both adults and older kids, right? So there was lots of ideas that kind of went into it. The artist is an actual experiencer who's had actual contact experiences. He lives in New York. I managed to track him down online. I came across his artwork many, many years ago, and I remembered him. I remembered his art pieces, and I really liked his kind of quirky art style. And also, he seemed to have a big knowledge of the UFO subject. You could tell from the things he was drawing in his art pieces. Yeah, but I had no idea who he was or whether he was still an artist or anything. I went looking online and managed to track down, after pages and pages, one of his old art pieces had his signature on it.
Oh,
Managed
right.
to look up his name online and find the guy. And it turned out he's still an active artist in New York. He's never done the artwork for a game before, and he was overjoyed when I told him what I was doing and who I was. And
Can you name him or
I can, yeah. The artist's name is Eric Black.
Eric Black, right?
And I'll show you the game. So I've got for those of you listening on audio, Dave can describe what you're seeing there. So that's the box with the front cover artwork on. The box is it's a flip top, a magnetic flip top box. So it kind of lifts up like that.
Yeah, very attractive box, I have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted it to be kind of quite nice and sturdy. Very pleased with the quality how it's turned out. The front box art essentially has a number of different alien species here, and then there's different craft types in the background. There's a saucer up there and a flying triangle up here and things. We've also got the military and a man in black back there as well. So the game is a competitive card game for 1 to 6 players. It's a resource gathering game. But I wanted to flip things on its head a bit. How most people would expect a game of that ilk would be that you play as the humans and maybe have to fight back against the aliens or something like that. I wanted to do it the other way around. I wanted you to actually play as the alien species. So in UFO Wave, at the start of the game, you actually choose one of these species you can play as. There's 6 different species that you can play as in the game, and they're all based on genuine experiences. We've got the greys are obviously in there. Nordics or humanoids, Palladians, whatever you want to call them, are in there. We've got mantid beings, less seen, but still I've dealt with a number of cases involving those tall insectoid types. We've got reptilians are in the game. We've got hybrids. I wanted to include the hybrid breeding program in the game as an element of UFO Wave. So one of the species you can actually play as is the hybrids, a human-alien crossbreed. And then the last species is a shadow being, which I've put in there because of the links with the paranormal world. So you choose a species at the start of the game, and they've all got their own different advantages. So it kind of creates a bit of replayability, so you can try it out with different species and see how the game plays. But essentially what you do in the game is you're tasked with performing activities such as abductions or landings or creation of crop formations, and also absorbing of energy, which can give you extra bonus points. There's a line of cards in the middle of the table called the scan, or the scan line, and it's essentially what you can see in the vicinity from your craft, both up in the air and on the ground. And on that, you're going to have various activities that can be performed. There's energy that you can absorb, and there's also groups of humans who are, most of the time, they're out to stop you. So we've got the military in there. There's Men in Black. There's even groups of Skywatchers. We've got groups of Skywatchers in the game. And lastly, I wanted to include a card for UFO enthusiasts, people who love the subject. So there's a card called Believers in there. And the Believers card is actually positive. You actually want to try to get spotted by the Believers and build up a bit of a following. So you're performing these activities for victory points by taking things off this line of cards here. Now, the interesting thing about UFO Wave and what makes it different is it's all about the positioning of the cards on that line. Because let's say, for example, there's a landing and it's worth a lot of points to you, and you'd just be able to take that landing usually. You'd just be able to perform that on your turn. But let's say that one side of it is a Man in Black and the other side of it is the military. Yeah, they're actually watching that card because they're adjacent to it on the line. Yeah. So while they're watching it, you can still perform that activity, but if you do, they're going to spot you. And when the humans spot you, you move the card in front of you directly on the table, and it has a negative effect mostly. Sometimes they can affect you at the end of the game, like maybe you lose you some points at the end of the game, or sometimes they can affect you straight away. So, for example, if you get Skywatchers and they spot you, it drops your maximum hand size, giving you less options. Now, the cards that you hold in your hand, you've got powers, which are advanced abilities that you can do, and also craft that you combine with the powers, and they have a wide variety of effects. Like some of them will affect the scan line, like maybe move positions of cards or remove cards. Other ones are more offensive, so you can use them to attack your other opponents directly, maybe causing paralysis on them, stopping them from doing things for a turn, that sort of thing. And then others are the other way around and are more defensive. An example of that is missing time. We've got missing time in there as one of the powers, and it allows you to counter a card that's been played against you by somebody else. So how you use your powers in craft in the game creates this kind of level of strategic depth that you pick up after numerous games, and there's certain ways of using the cards, and because you can use them in tandem, you can start to build up nice links by playing multiple powers one after a time to get really good points on your turn.
Actually sounds amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, we've so yeah, the game went out. It was kickstarted a couple of years ago. Kickstarter is a crowdfunding website where, because essentially I don't have the money to manufacture hundreds and hundreds of copies of the card game, so Kickstarter allows you to crowdfund it. So people basically back the game, give you the money, and then you send that off to the manufacturer and it gets made. We reached our Kickstarter goal. I was very pleased with that. And I was able to make both the game and its optional playmat, which I'll briefly display for those of you watching this on video. The optional playmat is very large in size.
Oh, I see. Right. So it's something. It's not. You don't have to have that. It's just kind of.
No, you don't know. But it looks really nice on the table.
It does. Yeah.
Got a really nice lit flying triangle up here, and the logo of the game on the other side.
It's a bit like a poker mat, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that line down the bottom, that's where the scan line goes that I've talked about with the cards, and then your decks go up the top. So you don't need it to play the game, but it makes things look really swish. And then the cards are nice and bright and vibrant colours, and they look really good on the sort of dark background on the table.
I do. So I have to say, it's a very attractive box.
Yes, yeah. It was. I'm very pleased with how it all turned out. And it was great having Eric do the artwork for the game, because obviously having his own experiences, that helped a lot. We've actually included one of his experiences inside the actual manual of the game, because I wanted to show people that he wasn't just saying he was an experiencer. There's the manual. The manual is themed like a top secret government document, the UFO Wave field guide.
Yeah, Dave's holding it up. It's not like it seems like a top secret document.
Absolutely,
with classified written across it.
Yeah, through there we've got all the typed text in there. This up here is Bob. He's our alien mascot. I wanted a kind of face for UFO Wave, and of course we had to go with the grey. It's a grey called Bob. And Bob is on the box of the game and also throughout the manual, sort of teaching you how to play it. That manual's been honed to perfection. We went through about 20 different versions to make sure that the wording was good for it.
I mean, hearing about it and seeing it just now, it makes me want to get a set, and I definitely will do, I'm sure.
It's actually on discount at the moment. We've actually got it on a short-term sale on there at the moment. So the game and the playmat, they can both be found on amazon.co.uk. If you're listening from abroad, I do international orders as well, but unfortunately I can't sell internationally through Amazon. It's extremely expensive to do that. You need to be much more
I've heard that before.
But I will send things directly as long as postage is covered. So just reach out to me and we can arrange that.
Right.
So the game's got a website, UFOWaveGame.com. I wanted to get UFOWave.com, but somebody had already nicked that, unfortunately. I don't think they were even using it, actually. I think it was like a blank website. But UFOWaveGame.com. On the website is there's our intro video. We did an animated advert launch video, which is wonderful. It has the background story.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
you've seen that. And we've got there's a merchandise store on there. So if you like the artwork, you can buy T-shirts and mugs and all sorts on there with all the art all over it. There's also, we sent it out for lots of reviews around the world, and there's a page on there with loads of comments of different game reviewers. It's been seen and reviewed by over 35 different game reviewers around the world. Some from here in the UK, others sent them abroad. So that's UFO Wave. It's some people say my midlife crisis. It's just something I wanted to do. It's a total passion project. I don't know whether it's going to be successful or not. I just did it. I've essentially, what I've gone and created is without a doubt the most authentic portrayal of the UFO subject ever seen in any tabletop game.
Well, I can see it catching on in the UFO field anyway. With people that.
Absolutely. And
having seen it myself, I tell you what, I will put all the adverts and things on I've got a Paranormal Dimensions page, which I'll put all the links and things on it.
I mean, obviously, check it out, and if that's your thing, or I've designed it to be kind of straightforward there. So even if you haven't played many card games before, but you love the fact it's on UFOs, you can easily pick it up. Like I say, it's got 8+ on the box. It could probably be taught to a 6-year-old if they played lots of games before.
Well, I think
but
that's
it's
the
got a level of
interesting
depth to it.
thing. If you like got a family, you got a father and a younger son, it's
Yes.
actually good to be able to play a game like that together because
Yeah.
you'll actually learn about things
That's
as
right.
well
Yeah,
to
it can be
do with
used as
UFOs.
yeah, it can genuinely be used as a kind of fun way of introducing your kids to the actual UFO
Well,
subject.
terms, you're going to get
Yeah, yeah,
terms and
totally.
you're going to learn a bit about the
Absolutely.
different species out there, the different ships,
That's right. Yeah.
and all the different events that can happen as well.
Indeed,
So
yeah. There's nods to famous cases in there. There's like wording all over the card, so you'll see little nods to Roswell and other cases
yeah,
embedded in the game. So lots to spot if you're into the subject, but you don't necessarily need to be into UFOs to kind of understand or play the game, and it's great fun. And
yeah, it's
I'm
good.
not just I'm saying that as a gamer, not as its designer.
Yeah.
It's just something I did. I just went and did it.
No, I mean, I think it looks really good, Dave. I'm not just saying that either. It
Yeah.
does. I shall get one anyway.
It's it's been my pet project for a while. It's good to finally get it out there commercially, and I'm going to be starting work on my book next. So a lot of people have asked when I'm going to be releasing a book, and the time is now. Should we say? I'm just going to start it. It'll take a while to put together, but yeah, obviously I've dealt with many cases over the years. Some really fascinating things. Some of which we talked about today.
Yeah. Well, we have to do it again, Dave, if you want to come. Yeah. So
of
maybe
course, I'm happy
maybe
to,
in a month or two or whatever.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
please,
we can go over some more
come
cases.
back on.
Yeah. Sure.
I hope your game does well for you.
Thank you.
It does deserve it, I must say, after seeing it and seeing the work that's gone into it.
We're taking it to the UK Games Expo at the start of June. It's the UK's biggest gaming convention. So for 3 days straight, we've booked out a table there. So we're going to be allowing people to play test the game and pick it up from there.
Oh, brilliant!
So hopefully that will kind of get it out into the gaming world a bit more. At the moment, there's a lot of people have heard about it through myself on Facebook and that sort of thing.
Well, hopefully a few more people hear about it now through this show. So, but yeah, as I say, we'll have to do it again, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to.
It's been great, talking to you and getting you on the show and everything. It's been fantastic seeing you as well.
Indeed, yeah.
And I do hope to see you maybe in Manchester if you can make it.
Yeah, I'll see if I can make it. Yeah, Steve Merrill actually said I'd be able to get a table there to actually sell UFO waves if I came along as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
I mean, because I'm sure you'd sell a few there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I may well make it up.
Because you can sign them as well. Then you get a sign.
Absolutely, yeah, always happy to sign them. Yeah, it'd be good actually. It would be good because there's some very good speakers this year. And but yeah, as I said, it's very close to a music festival for me.
Yeah,
so it all depends on how that goes down.
You might have to toss a coin, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, Dave, I'll let you go. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been a brilliant show. It's great seeing you, and good luck with the game again.
Thank you very much, David.
You take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you again soon. All right.
Thank you.
Cheers, Dave.
Bye.
There you go. Cheers. Oh, sorry. Hang on. Just before you go,
sorry. Yes.
Have you got a contact email address or something in case anyone wants to?
Let's go through things. So all the cases.
Sorry, everyone. Sorry about that.
All the cases we've gone over today are on the Birmingham UFO Group website. So the majority of cases that I investigate tend to get written up as case reports unless the witness specifically asks them not to be. So I'm happy to talk to people privately, but a lot of the time when they're okay with the details to go out. So all the cases we've gone over are on there, and hundreds more. There's a page you can do a search for particular things, particular craft types, or particular locations or years or whatever. You can have a look on there, see if you find things that have happened in your local area, etc. So that's all on the website. There's also a sightings report form on there. So if you've had an experience and you want to get in touch, that's one of the ways you can do it. On Facebook, we've got the organisation page. Just search for Birmingham UFO Group. On there, I'll release details of our monthly meetings where we have various speakers come and talk, sometimes do documentary screenings. They take place on the first Thursday of every month in Oldbury, North Birmingham, and anybody's welcome. You don't have to be an official BFOG member. Just check out on the website what's going on, the events. You can see upcoming meetings. I'm actually giving a new talk. I'm putting together a lecture on missing time at the moment, and I'm going to be giving that for the first time at the start of June, the first Thursday of June, which I think, I'm just going to get the date right a second. Give you the right date. Oh, it's the 1st. There we go. Yeah, literally the 1st of June. I'll be down. I'll be giving a brand new lecture on screen on missing time.
Excellent.
So we've got our Facebook community page as well, which is where we talk between meetings. It's called BFOG Truth Seekers. I'm the sole admin of that group, and I won't stand for any nonsense. So add yourself to the group. It's a safe place where you can talk about UFOs and other areas of the paranormal, ask questions, etc. There's about 1,500 members in that at the moment. And I also write for UFO Truth magazine as well, and put out monthly articles on bi-monthly articles on that as well. So I think that covers it. Oh, and we've already gone over the game website as well, haven't we? UFOwavegame.com.
As I say, I'll put all the links on the
find it.
Paranormal Dimensions page anyway, Dave.
Excellent.
For it. But again, thank you very much for coming on, and speak to you again soon. And take care of yourself. All right?
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Well, cheers, Dave. We'll do it again. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.